Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on What's the CO2. I'm your host, Matt Martinez, and episode 8 of the podcast is coming to you from Des Moines, Iowa. And today we have a fantastic guest who I met less than a week ago. Shout out to Dr. YC Cam. It's helping him move and came across Zane Chapman here. Zane is the throwing coach for Drake University track and field, and got the opportunity to chat with him very briefly. And he was very kind and generous to decide to come on to the podcast today. So, Zane, thank you so much for being here.
Appreciate it. I'm really happy to be here and do
Uh,
this.
I'm glad too. I have a soft spot for track and field. I ran track all throughout high school. Dabbled a little bit in college, but didn't really do anything serious. And so, track and field has a very special place in my heart. So, to have you on here and talk shop, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, so how I always like to start my interviews here is just to get to know you a little bit more before we dive into what your career is. So, uh, throwing all through high school, did you kind of fall into it, or how did your personal life go into throwing as an athlete?
Yeah. I think like a lot of kids, you're raised doing different sports, kind of common ones, football, baseball, basketball, things like that. And then my dad is actually the one that kind of brought the idea a bit more to encourage me to start throwing. He did it through junior high and high school as well. I was always, a bigger kid. I wasn't fast. Couldn't run long distances, things like that. And it's like, well, maybe that's the area for me. Um, so yeah, kind of dove into that in junior high, really kind of fell in love with it. Shot put and discus there in junior high, and then continued through high school while doing football and basketball as well, a little bit through high school, and really kind of fell in love with throwing more so. So as high school kind of went along, I put a little bit more of my emphasis into throwing along the way, and just really kind of fell in love with it. I was let's say good, not great in high school. But that didn't really matter to me. I really enjoyed what I was doing. And then I remember one of my coaches in high school kind of took me aside one day and he's like, "Hey, if you work hard enough at this and you really put some time into it, I think you might have an opportunity to do this, in college and maybe even at the Division 1 level." And so I kind of, I don't know, lit a fire in me a bit more that I didn't think I had. I never gave any thought to doing college athletics. I'd say through the front half of high school. And then it's like, oh, okay, he sees something in me, and so I put a little bit more emphasis through high school and kind of took off from there a little bit.
I mean, you say you were. I think your own words were good. I mean, you you did compete in D1
Sure.
collegiate athletics. So
Yeah.
you went to EIU, right? Eastern
Yep.
Illinois.
Yes.
Okay, so how did they find you, and why did you decide to go there?
I found them. So
Okay.
I grew up in the town next to it, Mattoon, Illinois. It's the town where I'm from, and EIU is in Charleston, so town next door. Um, Honestly, my mind was kind of always set that I was going to go to EIU no matter what. It was close, good school. It just kind of made sense for me. I didn't really feel like I needed to look anywhere else. So whether I was going to be an athlete or not, I was kind of set on going there. But as I, with kind of the encouragement of my coach and everything of, hey, you could be good enough to maybe do this, I was like, okay. So I dove into that. And I got better each year through high school there, especially like sophomore, junior year, kind of popped off a little bit. And we actually had a alum from my high school who was an athlete at EIU on the track and field team, who I kind of leaned to a little bit of, hey, like, do you think there's a chance that I could compete for EIU? And I was like, could you maybe put a word in for me with the throws coach? So there was kind of a loose connection established there a little bit, and sent an email about my interest in doing it and everything. And she had emailed me back, the coach at EIU, like, hey, this is kind of what I'm looking for. Keep working hard, things like that. And so I unfortunately had kind of a worse senior year, if you will. I don't know what it was. Just I didn't progress the way that my sophomore and junior year kind of did through high school. So I kind of felt like, man, I kind of ruined my chances. I was like, well, I'm still going to go there no matter what, be a student regardless. And then she offered me a tryout for the team there at EIU, which I was just ecstatic about. It's like, awesome, I got a chance, you know what I'm saying? So went through the tryout process and earned myself a roster spot on the team and worked hard, eventually earned scholarship through the way and things like that, kind of worked my way up through the program, so to speak.
Was being a coach always in the back of your head, or you were wanting to go to EIU for what was your mindset as far as like, okay, outside of track and field, what were you focusing on?
Yeah, so I was actually a business major my freshman year. Um, yeah, I don't want to say it was a fallback, but I don't know. In my mind, I was thinking I want to work for myself, right? I want to do my own thing. I feel like in my mind, business management specifically, what I was thinking is like, I feel like that could open up a lot of doors for me. And then as I kind of went through my first year of school at EIU there, I felt like I didn't really have a passion for it. Um, so I kind of lost interest in it, and I was thinking through like, well, what do I like, and what are my interests? And I'm an athlete, and I was like, well, I guess maybe it's cliche, but it falls into it, kinesiology, right? Exercise science, things like that. So I switched my major to that, but I loved what I was doing a lot with the schooling and things like that. And my kind of thought was, as I kind of went through that first or second year after I switched my major, was really becoming like a strength conditioning coach. Was kind of my first thought of like, I think that's what I want to do. Obviously, we're in that realm as athletes there, and I had a good relationship with our strength staff at Eastern. And I was like, I feel like I could see myself doing this, and I had a passion for it and I enjoyed it. So that's kind of what I was thinking for my sophomore year on there at EIU. But originally, no, like it wasn't coaching going into college. Even that first year, I wasn't thinking anything about that. So, yeah.
And then once your athletic career was starting to come to its end, you stayed at EIU, right?
I
As a
did.
volunteer coach?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was that just like, did you approach them about that, or were they come to
Yeah.
you?
So,
And also, is that a paid position?
no,
That's what,
no,
okay, yeah.
not paid at all. Not paid at all. So like I said, I lived in the town next door. And my plans were after undergrad was I'm going to take a year off of school, and work, save a bunch of money and attend grad school at EIU. It was kind of my initial plan. I'd worked 2 jobs through college on the side. And so I just started working those a lot more. And kind of that, after graduating that summer, working 50, 60 hours a week, trying to save up a lot. And then track season or fall comes around, preseason opens up there for track the next academic year. And prior to that, I asked my coach, I was like, hey, I live 10 minutes away. I'm still in the area. Do you want some help? I'd love to help out a little bit. And so that's kind of where the initial path of that started, of doing that. And then it's like my intentions was, okay, I'll help out, a couple times a week. I'll come over at 3:30 and help out for a couple hours, and that's that. Well, then that turned into 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week. On our bigger training weeks, things like that. And then I really kind of fell in love with it. Rather than just it's kind of fun to do on the side. Is like I really enjoy doing this. So I kind of turned into that, and then even traveling to some meets with the team whenever they allowed and my work schedule could allow. So that's kind of how the whole coaching thing happened with that at EIU, doing that with being a volunteer assistant position there at Eastern.
And then help me remember the timeline. So from EIU, is that when Wisconsin came up after?
So towards the end of that,
Yeah.
so basically what it is, the throws coach currently at Wisconsin at the time, David Strauskis, he's a EIU alum as well. And his head coach was also the same head coach that I had in college. And so there was a connection there. And during my time of volunteer coaching at EIU, Dave had reached out to my head coach and asked, like, hey, do you know of anyone that might be interested, or do you know of any connections where I can try and find a volunteer coach? Because he takes it pretty serious. Dave does, having volunteers. He brings people on like with the intentions of this is what you want to do, right? Not kind of my intention at Eastern was something just on the side of like, if you're going to come here and do this, this is to help set you up for a career path. So he took it pretty serious. So then he talked to my throws coach, and who then talked to me and said, hey, there's an opportunity up at Wisconsin. If you feel like you might want to do this, you should really think about it. She told me that, and my first reaction was pretty quick. I was like, no, I'm going to go to grad school, like, thanks, but no thanks kind of thing. And she's like, you should really think about it. I was like, no, it's not my interest, So then I don't remember what the timeline was, maybe a week later, a couple weeks, something like that. She's like, hey, uh, Dave reached back out and he's like, hey, I really want to reconsider this. So then she kind of had a pretty serious conversation with me, my coach, and was like, you've done a good job for me. I feel like you could have a career in this. You're doing a good job. And it's like, if you like this, you should really think about, like, strongly consider going up and doing this. So like she was talking pretty serious about it, kind of made me reevaluate a little bit. And, my original intentions of being a strength coach and doing grad school is like, well, some schools have the situation where you can run the strength conditioning programming for the throwers. Not every school is like that, but there's a lot of variables that go into that. But I was like, well, there's a chance that that can overlap. And then I'm really enjoying coaching throws itself, more so than even strength conditioning at that point. And I was like, maybe I should, entertain this. And it's like, Dave's there at Wisconsin, one of the, top throws programs in the country every year, and just a great opportunity. So really thought long and hard about it. Going up there financially was kind of a thing I had to think about too, because it's unpaid. It's a volunteer position. That's kind of how you get your foot in the door into the coaching world, unless you got a name for yourself, which I did not. I'm not a former Olympian or anything like that. So I kind of had to work that way. And so I actually got a loan from a relative to go up there to do that. And I guess I'll back up. I told my coach to tell Dave, hey, I'm interested in doing this. So that's how that happened. So then he actually kind of had like a little interview process with me. He took it pretty serious for a volunteer position and everything. And he's like, well, let me, chat with my head coach up there at Wisconsin, and I'll get back to you and let you know. And then my grad school application deadline was coming up pretty quick. I think it was in March, I think it was, the year after I graduated. And so this would have been 2016. And I think I reached back out to him. I was like, hey, not trying to be pushy, but like, I kind of need to know here. And he got back to me and said, hey, I want to offer you to come up if you want to do it. So I was like, yeah, I kind of already committed myself at that point that that's what I want to do, and had great connections. So I was kind of in the right spot at the right time. And that's kind of how that opportunity came up.
Did you kind of have, uh, well, I guess let me back up a little bit. So, do you feel like it was at that moment when you had made a firm decision about that path that you wanted to take? Because, I mean, grad school, I guess you could have went back to grad school,
Sure.
but there was a clear, like, okay, I'm either going to grad school
Mm-hmm.
or I'm taking this volunteer
Mm-hmm.
position. And if I take this volunteer position, I mean, I wouldn't say it's not a point of no return, but
No.
it's a big life choice for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So right then, were you okay, or I guess, were you at peace with the fact that, like, yeah, I'm gonna go be a throwing coach. This is gonna be my life.
Yeah, I was. And I kind of, like you mentioned, doesn't mean it's a point of no return, but in my mind was, if I'm doing this, I'm going to go do it. And like, I'm going to find a way to make this work no matter what. And it was kind of a risk. My initial plan, like I said, grad school, and kind of some of those, societal pressures of, you need to follow the safe route, in some ways. And this is what you came to school for, and like, you need to keep on that path. And I didn't really have pressure from family or anything either to do that. My parents have always been really supportive of, like, you need to be passionate about what you want to do and like do something you love. And I think a lot of that reassurance from that aspect kind of made it more comfortable, made it easier for me to be fine with taking that risk, I guess. And I trusted my coach and Dave of, feeling like I was going to be in good hands and set up in a good position to eventually open up some doors for me. And it wasn't, I would say it really wasn't a hard decision. Like I said, at first I did say no, but once I really thought about it, I was like, I feel like this makes a lot of sense. I love it. I was confident in my abilities of what I was doing at the time, of, being a young volunteer coach. Like, I feel like, obviously I got tons to learn. You never stop learning, but it's like, I feel like I had a good grasp on this, and I feel like I feel like I can be cut out to do this. To myself, I was like, if I'm going to move out of state and go up to Wisconsin and do this, then this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to find a way to make it work, because I love it. And at that point, I kind of told myself, like, I don't know if I want to be a strength and conditioning coach only. Like, I like that. I think I'd be fine with that. But compared to what I was experiencing being a throws coach and the possibility of also doing the strength coach aspect, like that checks all the boxes. So I dove into it.
I think you mentioned something really important there, and it's that your family wasn't really like against the idea
Mm-mm.
of it. So, um, or for that person that's at a similar crossroads that you were
Mhm.
at this time that may be listening, how would you encourage them about the importance of having a um, community behind them that's supportive of them? How important was that for you to not be alone in the sense of
Yeah.
that big life decision that you were going to
No,
make?
it was huge. I think a lot of people aren't as fortunate to be in those situations where maybe it's their friends, family, or maybe even just kind of their own self thought of thinking like I need to go the safe route, or this is what I'm, I guess, set up to do. My original intentions. It's okay to change plans, and I think ultimately you got to go with your gut to an extent of, well, if I sit back and think what's drawing my interest, what am I enjoying, or what do I think I'm going to enjoy the most, do that. And from a financial standpoint, strength coaching, being a strength coach versus throws coaching, pay, like that was never really a thing in my mind of anything like that. And there's a lot of variables there, but I guess on the high end of things, sure, you can make more being a strength coach, at some of those unique situations, but there's also throws coaches that make good livings as well. But that wasn't really my motive at all. It really wasn't with anything like that. It was like, I love doing this. And it's like, I feel like it was like a cheat code. Like, well, I can get paid to do this, something I love so much, and so no, it was really important to have that support. Like I said, I never had any pressure from that. Maybe in some, conversations I had with other people, like, are you sure you want to do that? Like maybe people just don't know, of like, I guess what that world's like, and maybe my real full interest in doing it. It's easy to look on the outside looking in, but people that were in my inner circle, my close friends and family, they're like, no, they were like, if you feel like you want to do this and you love it, like go do it. So it was really nice to have that. Because I definitely had some thoughts of like, am I making the right decision here? Like my mind's been set on this for a few years now. Like this is what I want to do. And then all of a sudden this random opportunity comes up and it's like, I think it makes sense, and maybe it's meant to be in some ways.
Did you ever think of the worst case scenario when you were making that decision? And then were you like, okay, well, if this doesn't work out, I can always go do X, Y, or Z? Or were you like, no, this is gonna happen. I know it is.
I mean, I did. Like I said, I told you my intention was I'm going to make this work. But of course, I did think about, you got to hope for the best, prepare for the worst, right? And so my thought was, well, I guess if it doesn't work out, then like you said, you can still go to grad school. But from a financial standpoint, I was going up there. I literally took a loan out from a relative to go out there and do that, and they had to pay back. So it's like I'm not making any money doing that.
Mhm.
Although I did work on the side while I was at Wisconsin, but from a financial point, trying to get ahead because I had to pay for most of my schooling and things like that. And it's like I got to put myself in a situation to uh, be able to support what I want to do. So I was like, well, I guess I feel like maybe I'll be a little bit more behind, but I could always try and get back into that. So I gave it thought, but not too much. I was just really thinking more so of what I think and know is going to come versus the bad stuff, I guess. So maybe it's, I don't know, maybe not a smart way to do it, but I guess it worked out.
Uh, we had done some preparation before this conversation here, and you said you had learned so much in the year that you were at Wisconsin compared to uh, the previous five being
Yeah.
involved in this sport. What exactly was it? What kind of crash course did you have there as far as coaching goes?
Yeah. The biggest thing is just kind of the level of athletes you're dealing with. There. So at Wisconsin, they're in the Big Ten, which is generally the premier throws conference, and Dave had and has had a ton of success. Just the caliber of athletes that he had. He had at the time a newly Olympic discus thrower. He was training for the Rio Olympics in 2016, NCAA champion, and he had others before them as well. So being able to see that end of athletic ability and being able to be in a group like that was really eye opening, and being at that level. And no knock to EIU or our program or myself, but it's a different level. It was compared to what we had at Eastern, and just also is getting a different perspective on coaching and things like that. There's 100 ways to throw far and coach it. There's not one way that's the best. I'm a firm believer in that. But there are certain things that work better than others, generally speaking. But to go out there and see this is another way to do it, there's been a proven success of doing that. And also, it's not like they're just getting a bunch of top recruits in or things like that, which he did and still is. But also, he did a really good job developing athletes. He came from a D2 school, SIU Edwardsville, a D2 at the time, now Division One. And so being able to see, like, okay, he's kind of been in the trenches, so to speak, in a situation where I was, and he's developed the program and athletes. And so he knows both ends of the world, so to speak, of that kind of spectrum of college athletics. So that there's a lot of value in that. So, it's not like he's only been used to kind of the bright lights and the Big Ten and things like that. He's kind of been all over. So I found a lot of value in that. And just being in that environment, being at kind of that level, really just kind of opened up my eyes a bit more and seeing that. And Dave's the man. He's a hell of a coach. And he does a great job. And I learned a lot from him. I really did. He knows I'm thankful for. I've told him that, but I don't think he realizes how much he taught me. And it just really helped catapult me into my coaching career and trying to get hired on at a school after that.
So then, real quick before we transition to where you are now at Wisconsin, you get to coach an Olympian. Is that correct?
I did. I got to help out coaching her Kelsey Card, who I'm friends with, still have a good relationship with. So yeah, being able to coach an Olympian, to my mind, coming out of a small little mid-major program was like, whoa, you know what I'm saying? And getting there and, getting your hands and eyes on that situation of just seeing people move at that level, it's just different. It really is. So being able to help out, and by no means did I say I coached her. That's Dave did it. I'm just there helping out, right? But being able to still just have even a little bit of time to work with her was awesome to do that. And you can apply that to the other athletes and things like that of what to do, what not to do. So there's a lot of things you can pull from that. Just having that experience and being able to be in an area where an Olympian is and see that level of athleticism is pretty cool to work with.
Did you notice a significant difference in just like natural ability when it came to helping coach her? I mean, because we all know and hear about great athletes, but I don't think we really take the time to consider what it's like to coach those types of individuals, right? So like for me, so I really enjoy watching basketball. I think about Phil Jackson, like he coached Jordan, he coached Pippen, he coached Rodman, and then he goes off to coach Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal, and just I think the coaching aspect of it just gets overlooked because of the talent that you see on the field. But or also like Bill Bowerman, and he coached Steve Prefontaine, who, if you're for those that know Steve Prefontaine, the character that he was and the relentless spirit that he had. But what is it about an Olympian? Like, do they know that they have that talent, or is it like what exactly goes into like the minute details about trying to get that certain individual prepared for competing at the highest level
Yeah,
possible?
I mean, I think from the foundation, those people are generally wired a little bit different. I do, and I'm sure there's been plenty of people that have gotten that level that maybe not never saw themselves being there. But I think foundationally, I think those people are wired a little bit different. I think you obviously have a little bit of genetics on your side with certain things as well. But the work ethic and the drive and the mentality they have is just kind of unique. I'm not saying an athlete who's not an Olympian can't have those qualities, but that has to be there. And seeing the way that she worked, the kind of behind the scenes things day in and day out of just practice and doing the way she warms up and monotony of doing drills or whatever it may be, just those little things, just the purpose that it's done with, and then the level of execution after that is the difference that you see, and just kind of the reps day in and day out of how well they're trying to check all the boxes and preparing themselves. It's just a little bit different. I don't know. It's hard to say. And I asked Dave about that. When I got there, like what's Like I asked him like, what's different about Kelsey, compared to the others? And he's like, and no knock on the other athletes. Like, there's some high caliber athletes there, countless All-Americans, and some of them, could have been borderline Olympians themselves as well. But she was just a little bit better, at that level. And you'll see, she just, the way she moves and does things, like just a little bit different level. And it was, and even just any of the athletes there compared to the general sense of what I was used to training with every day and competing at EIU was just a difference, just kind of a different level of athletes there at Wisconsin.
So then you spend 1 year at Wisconsin,
Correct.
okay? Um, you're not from the Iowa area.
No.
So then Drake comes, did you go seek out Drake, or was Drake looking for coach and then they find you? How'd that come about?
Yeah. So basically, at the end of the season there at Wisconsin, the goal is to apply and hopefully get a job. Every offseason is a little bit different. The coaching movement of people leaving, switching jobs, there may be, seems to happen in different time frames every summer. Summer's the active period for that. Once the season's done, we just wrapped up the NCAA season here about a week or two ago by NCAAs, and usually after that you see a big change and stuff that happens. For whatever reason, that year movement happened pretty late in the year, so there wasn't much that was opening up that was of interest to me, or I felt that was worthwhile. Not that I was trying to be picky or anything at all. I was like, in a lot of ways, it was like, I'll take any opportunity. Um, but also, there was some restrictions. Like ideally, I wanted to stay somewhat close to home, Midwest. There's things like that. But I did apply for jobs that were all over the place as well. So I did have phone calls and interviews. Some that reached out to me through connections, and obviously utilizing my connection there at Wisconsin with Dave and the other coaches on staff there to help. But ultimately, Drake, they'd to my knowledge, cleaned house and opened up the position. And then there was my first boss, Mark Carroll, who was the head distance coach at Auburn. He got the job at Drake as the head coach, and I had seen a post on Facebook about it. And so then I reached out to Dave and said, "Hey, do you have any connections to Drake? Do you know Mark? Do you have any connections to Auburn?" Mark's an Irishman, and our head coach at Wisconsin, who just retired, Mick Byrne, um, uh, also Irish, and had a lot of connections to him as well as Gavin Kennedy, who was a distance coach at Wisconsin at the time. So there were some connections. They'd known each other for years. And I was like, okay, like, what can we do to maybe try and establish just a bit more, because I'd kind of been striking out a little bit with some jobs, I had some calls and stuff. And, it was like a finalist for a few, but they decided to go different directions. So I was starting to become, let's see, it was August at this point. I was like, well, school's starting up here in a few weeks. I got to figure something out. And I'd asked Dave, I was like, if I can't find a job, can I come back? And he's like, I'd love to. He's like, but I hope for your sake, we can get you something, I was like, do I want to commit to another year doing this? And, I was working at a gas station on the side, and it was a grind. It really was doing, volunteer coaching, but trying to make ends meet as well on the side. But I loved every minute of it. I can't knock that at all. So August comes around, that opens up, and it's like, okay, I want to do this, and I was familiar with Drake being from the Midwest and things like that. And Drake relays everything that you kind of know about Drake. And I was like, let's see if we can do something. So use those connections that we had with some of the coaches at Wisconsin, and then to connect with Mark Carroll, the new head coach at the time at Drake, and got a phone call set up, interview, and eventually got hired on at Drake.
So you're at Drake, but you had just said that they kind of cleaned house prior. Is that right? So
Yeah.
what was the throwing program like? Or was there even a throwing program here? Or?
No, so no throws program. It was basically distance and sprints. By the time I got there, to my knowledge, I think their last hired throw specific coach was 8 or 9 years prior to me. They had some people that helped out with throws. I think the former director of the Drake Relays, Mark Kostek is his name. He had a throws background, and he had done some throws coaching with some athletes there. Was kind of what I was told. But as for someone who, hey, you are hired to coach throws, I think they hadn't had that for 8 or so years prior to me getting there. Having a full-time throws coach with a staff and consistent program going. So yeah, there's no throwers there whenever I got the Drake.
So what were the expectations then for you when you arrived at Drake? And I guess if you can speak more forest for the trees, what exactly are how are expectations set in general for coaches in the NCAAs, like track and field specifically? Like no, I know at my job, there's expectations,
Mhm.
right? A yearly review.
Yeah,
Um, Coaching is perhaps a little bit more nuanced. There's only
sure.
so much you can control at the end of the day.
Mhm.
So what was that like for you on a personal level, but then also just kind of overall?
Yeah, I mean, from from them, their expectations for me was to, I guess in general terms, be relevant in our conference, Missouri Valley Conference. Obviously, relevant. You can go 100 ways with that. Um, there wasn't any, I'll say, high expectations. I don't think their original intentions was to, I guess, have a dominant throws program. I don't know if that, our intentions at the time were to really make that an area of emphasis for us within the track and field program. I was a young coach, first job. I was 20, I think I was 24 when I got hired at Drake. If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think I was 24. Yeah. Because I don't think I could drive our rental vehicles. I think you had to be 25. So I think until my birthday in April, I wasn't allowed to drive our rental vehicles if I'm remembering that correctly. Kind of funny. But yeah, it was kind of like, let's get some relevance at the conference level, and then for myself was, I knew this was going to be a challenging task. And I talked to Dave, I was like, hey, there's no throws program here. Like, it's kind of intimidating. I'm not going to lie, and it's like Drake has a name, maybe track and field success in recent years wasn't great. But Drake still has a name, and I'm not someone that's going to go, kind of lackadaisical through something. Like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And it's like, I'm coming in here with big goals, and however long that may be. But so for myself, I definitely had higher expectations than what externally was put on me. Um, but I still had that idea that, okay, relevance at the conference level is great, but it's like, I want to get to here, right? Like, how do we go from being relevant to having conference champions and then getting on the NCAA level at national championships, things like that. Um, Not necessarily, I was thinking not that's going to happen in the first couple of years, but it's like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to work towards that, right? So external pressure and stuff, expectations weren't super high. Internally, they were.
How do you personally keep those expectations high? How do you and I'm not, everyone has a bad day at the office, right? Sometimes your mind is just exhausted.
Yeah.
But how did you keep that personal goal even though Drake probably didn't have the same high expectations for you? What's that like?
Yeah. I think I'd use the phrase with you when we were chatting prior to was, I guess doing something that we're not supposed to do, if you will. Like, Drake's a small little private school. Maybe we're not putting a whole lot of resources into funding the throws area. Um, but I knew what I wanted to do and what I feel like I was capable of as a coach, as long as I can try and get the right kids in the door that are going to believe they're going to be part of something special here, and it was challenging I put myself in the athlete's shoes at the time, do you trust a 24-year-old coach? This is their first, real paid job. Is like, that's a risk that they're looking to take too when they have other options, and but it's a snowball effect. You work hard to get that first recruit, and it's like, okay, we got one. How do we get another? And then it's like, okay, give me some time to work with them when they get here. And it's like, then they'll see, right? So I just knew in the back of my mind, it's like, just give me something to work with and we're going to do something. I was really confident in the ability to do that. And I felt like Drake was honestly a lot of untapped potential. The Midwest is a big throws farm, if you will, in a lot of ways. There's a lot of great throwers in the Midwest out of the high school. Very competitive here. So there's talent in the area, and then in the Des Moines area itself. And obviously with, the name that we have for Drake relays and things like that, I feel like you can lean into that a little bit from a recruiting standpoint. So I feel like there's a lot of areas that weren't being tapped into. And then obviously from a throw standpoint, just weren't at all. There was no one on staff to do it. So it's like, well, it can't get any worse. You know what I'm saying? So it's only up from here. So it's like, well, I guess in that regard, something's better than nothing. But I just kind of stayed the course. And it's like, I'm just going to get some kids in the door and we're going to do something here. In that first year while I was there was, we had a pole vaulter, Eric Olson was his name, who tried to teach him a little bit of jav to do that. So I had tried to have some bodies to work with, right? And then pulled a soccer player to come throw some jav, and another kid that came over from football who I tried to teach hammer throw to. So like there were some, instances that first year of just trying to get something to work with. while I was recruiting that first year to try and get kids to come in for my second year. And then so from there, it's a combination of those kids I was trying to work with we had on campus, to then, okay, here's some actual throwers out of high school. So let's try and just build from there.
Shout out to Jake Taylor and Joey Harkins
Yes,
helping to get
absolutely.
the throwing program started.
Yeah,
So Jake was from soccer,
correct.
right? Joey football.
Mm,
Zero throwing experience.
none.
None. And then they're getting asked to compete at a collegiate level.
Yeah.
How'd you even find those guys? Like, what was that like?
Yeah. So Jake, if I remember right, he came to me. So I think he'd finished up his eligibility with soccer in his school year. They're down there in the fall. Then he's like, "Hey, I want to, I'm here for the spring. I want to keep being an athlete if I can." And as deep as the Missouri Valley Conference is in throws, it's a very throws dominant conference. Javelin, especially at the time, is kind of the anomaly a little bit in the throws area. It's not as competitive as like shot, disc, or hammer is. And he's like, I feel like I got a good arm and maybe we can do something. I was like, well, there's more to it than that. But I was like, let's see what we can do, and he did. He had a good arm, and there's a lot of obviously more to it than throwing a jab than just being able to throw something far. But we're able to, do something with him, and he scored at the conference meet that first year, and only year that I had him. And then, Joey came along, who originally he was a long jumper and sprinter at a high school, and was on our football team that first year. Our sprints coach at the time didn't want him, didn't need him. I needed someone to work with. I see a guy who's 6'3", 6'4", but 200 pounds at the time. I was like, work with, and zero throwing experience, no concept of being in a throwing ring or wearing throwing shoes, anything. Was like, I need a body to work with, right? It's kind of how I viewed it. And so he came on and took a lot of work, a lot of time to get something going. And then he ended up staying with us for, his whole time, 5 years through college with the COVID year in there. And he did some amazing things as well. All conference, went to first round of the national championships a couple times, and pretty cool success story if you ask
Holy
me.
cow.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun working with Joey.
Yeah. So you had to coach through COVID then.
Yes.
So I think I can't remember where I had read this at, but during that year you weren't able to really be physically one-on-one so much with the athletes. And so I think like uh as far as like I'm just going to use the javelin example because that's what I can remember. Like they're like in their backyard, like throwing broomsticks.
Sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, not literally broomsticks, but yeah. So basically, we got shut down in March. Obviously after everything kind of started outbreaking. It was actually during or right before the indoor national championships. I think it was like that first couple of days of March, if I'm not mistaken, there in 2020. So basically, after that, got shut down, and then so obviously it's all on the fly, right? It's new to everyone. How do we train? What do we do? So it was. Okay, here's some implements. Try and find a place to throw, make a garage gym to lift, like literally anything. Me and some of my athletes that summer later on, actually helped them build a backyard wooden squat rack in their backyard to lift. Try to get creative, throwing at parks and out of a parking lot, things like that. Throwing is kind of challenging to navigate in times like that. If you're a distance runner, well, you got your place to go run, right? Throwing is a little bit different. You got to find a place that you can throw safely, have the equipment to do that, and then obviously the lifting aspect. So that was kind of challenging to navigate through. After March, we got closed down and through the summer. And then, we got, limited capacity stuff once the school year started back up there in the fall of 20. And everything was limited. And then we, had a little outbreak, and then we get shut down, and okay, no more contact with anyone for a while. So yeah, it was definitely a challenging time to try and navigate that. We were anticipating a pretty big outdoor season that year that got shut down, obviously. And yeah, that was kind of tough to deal with from a coaching standpoint. And then obviously the athletes had it the worst. Some kids didn't get to finish their last year and things like that. So that was tough.
So where is Drake now? What does the program look like now compared to when you first walked through the door? I mean, uh, when we had just met, you'd say you just got back from Eugene,
Yeah.
national championships.
Correct.
So, which on a side note was on my bucket list. Eugene, Beaverton, Oregon, birthplace of where the running fad came to be. So it's on a complete side note there. But yeah, sounds like Drake is on the up and up.
Yeah, it's a point of, kind of reloading, not rebuilding anymore, as I like to say. So I'd say it took, the first 3 to 4 years to get something kind of established, with a decent group of kids, talent, and developing some kids, some transfers that came in. Had an Olympic trials qualifier in the shot put. I think it was my third year in there. It was, so that was kind of the catapult on the national scene. And then Joey getting himself to the first round of NCAAs as well. And then, then it's like, oh, people are starting to take notice, right? We see we see a Drake jersey at national championships out in Oregon. Okay, then social media obviously a huge thing is with recruiting and building things, and so we start getting a little bit of a name for ourselves, and there's kind of snowballed effect from there. So yeah, where we're at now is kind of standard is getting to that point now. We've had 4 or 5 national qualifiers, a few All Americans. Just had another one this year, a couple weeks ago, shot putter. So that's kind of, I don't say normal, but kind of standard for us now to at least to be on that stage to some capacity and at the conference level, winning titles and things like that. We swept some throwing events this year at our conference championship meets with weight throw and shot put from indoors and outdoors, hammer as well. So we've had a good stretch of success doing that, and getting some higher level recruits and developing kids still along the way. And it's been a fun ride doing this. We've had I don't know, well over a dozen NCAA qualifiers for the first round over the past several years now, and trying to add, get those kids from first round to the finals there out in Eugene as well every year, and we're doing that relatively consistently as well. And credit goes to them; it really does. I like to say they just make me look good. In a lot of ways they do. So I know there's 2 paths to it, but ultimately they're the one that's putting in the work and throwing the implement and giving Drake a name, which is a lot of fun to do.
And now that Drake is starting to get this national attention, obviously you are starting to get noticed more on the recruiting side of
Sure.
things. I think you, when we had first met, you were on a recruiting or having a recruiting conversation with someone overseas. Uh, but how, I think for those that are in the know, the NCAA recruiting process, the transfer portals, it's opened up a whole new
Yeah.
uh, can of worms, I guess you'd say.
Sure. Yeah. Don't sugarcoat it.
Yeah, no, nope,
Yeah.
not.
There's good and bad, but yeah.
Um, the media focuses on basketball, football, as far as like how the transfer portal affects those things. But from a track and field perspective, I mean, you don't hear anybody talk about this. So, what's it like as a coach having to navigate this brand new world where you don't? I mean, even your previous coach at Wisconsin, Dave, didn't even have to really take into consideration. And so, what's your mindset when you're talking to these kids? What's the incentive of going to Drake as opposed to the other schools who may have a little bit more money in the bank? Just being honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you approach those?
Yeah, it's challenging. It is, and the portal's worked in our favor as well. I've had some great athletes that have transferred in over the years, several actually, and have done some pretty remarkable things for us. So it's definitely a tool that you, I'll say, have to use, but probably should. And every school's recruiting approach is different, but it does allow good opportunities. It really does. Obviously, you kind of see the bad things about it with other sports and motives of going into the portal. A lot of times financially related, which does happen in track and field, and but not to the extent by any means that you see with some of your revenue sports such as football and basketball. But it's definitely something that we utilize, and we got to be aware of. And every year, once that portal window opens, like it just opened couple few weeks ago, we're scouring the portal and seeing who's there and reaching out to kids. And it's a tool you definitely got to utilize in recruiting. Obviously, keeping a focus of high school kids and everything like that coming in. But if there's some pieces that work for kids to transfer in, then we do that. And I've had 2 of my All-Americans were transfers coming in. They developed into All-Americans, but the kids that have come in have done some pretty awesome things. And just got another transfer that's coming in for us this fall as well. So it's definitely a reality, things that we utilize and should and continue to do so.
Now to get a little bit more on the personal side and still stay at Drake. You met your wife there at Drake.
So we actually met in college at
Okay,
EIU.
gotcha,
Yep.
gotcha. Okay.
So we were teammates at EIU. So that's how we met. Sorry if I didn't clarify that prior
No,
to.
you're good.
Excuse me. So we met there, um, and started dating in college, and that was kind of another hard thing of going to Wisconsin at the time. Well, was leaving my then girlfriend behind. Was like, well, this is career, and like we'll make it work. Moving out of state, and actually we got engaged in Wisconsin. And then obviously the time there at Wisconsin, then going to Drake was okay. Well, now I'm moving to a different state, obviously still close and everything, but still living out of state. It's challenging, and we're newly engaged and everything like that at the time there in Wisconsin. And then taking that job at Drake and being away, knowing that we're going to be away some more time. She was finishing up her school back at EIU. So she'd finished up her time at EIU. I was in my first year at Drake, and my then boss, Mark Carroll, basically had said, "Hey, we had conversations about Lex, my wife, and fiance at the time, of hey, she still has some eligibility left, and she's a good athlete. Do you think she'd want to throw?" And I was kind of surprised by that. It's a unique situation. So I never asked him; he asked me, and I was like, "Sure, like if you're interested in opening up that door." And I was like, obviously there's some interesting things with potential of coaching your wife, you know what I'm saying? And we got married early on there at my time at Drake before she came to compete. But I was like, let me think through that and then see if we want to do that. But I was like, from a competitive standpoint, obviously it makes sense, but do we want to do that from our relationship standpoint? And so we chatted through it and had the opportunity to do that. So she finished up her time at Eastern, came up to Des Moines to Drake, and had a unique opportunity to coach my wife for her last year of eligibility there. And was it the 2018-19 season, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken.
I can't imagine coaching my wife in anything.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely presented, challenges. It did. And trying to separate, practice from when we go home, I'm saying, things like that. So it was definitely a unique balance. But it was an experience I wouldn't trade for anything. It was cool to do that. And watching her trying to finish out some of her athletic goals, and she improved a ton. She came to Drake and was training with me and things like that. So watching her be able to achieve some of the things that she wanted to do, kind of one last hurrah, so to speak, for her was a lot of fun to do that. It's not an opportunity that a lot of people get to do. So I was really happy to do it. Yeah.
Absolutely. You had written to me in preparing for the episode that getting married and having kids was by far the biggest influence on your life so far. Um, what exactly changed when you became a father and a husband? What's the mind shift?
Oh man, that was getting married was kind of that first step of that, right? And when we got married there in 2018, that just kind of opens a whole new world, and it's like I'm a husband now, and that just, I don't know, internally is like, well, there's kind of brings it up a notch. There's a whole new level to this, it's real now, if that makes sense. And so that just wedding day, that's one of the best moments of my life. Being able to make that commitment and do that, and then along the way, having our first child, becoming a father is, man, it's the best thing in the world. It really is. I get emotional talking about it, but that whole process of ourselves committing that let's have a kid, we want to do this, and then when it actually happens and being in there in the room, that's the best thing ever. Being a husband, being a father, it's best part of life, without a doubt.
And in that journey, you were brave enough to share some personal insight into the highs and lows with that as well. And starting your family, you had stated that you and your wife had gone through the struggles of having miscarriage. Two of them,
Yes.
if that's correct. I don't think it gets talked about enough as far as what it feels like as a potential father and a husband to hear that news. Obviously it's devastating for uh, the wife, but as a father, you're hearing that and you're going through the struggles of trying to start a family. What's your mindset, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. I feel like we got lucky with our first first son, Mac, is his name. He's 5 now. We were able to get pregnant relatively easy with him, and like, okay, we'll take X amount of time off till we want to have another one. Like we told ourselves, we're gonna have at least 2 kids. Is kind of what we were thinking, and we waited about 2 years or so, roughly, till we wanted to start trying again for a second kid, and we had struggled getting pregnant. It was kind of okay. Well, it's not always just this easy, right? We didn't struggle with our firstborn, so that was hard in itself. Doing that and kind of going through like, well, this is something we want, but we can't have, and we were able to have it with our firstborn, and then finally she got pregnant, and obviously I was like, oh, okay, okay, we're good, And I remember I came home one day from work, and she gave Mac, my firstborn, a piece of paper, said like, I'm going to be a big brother. I was like, oh my God, I was like, oh, it was amazing. And then shortly after that, realizing that wasn't going to happen. That was tough. That was, I guess, not to be too dramatic, but it was one of the worst days of my life. It really was. The moment I found out that she miscarried. Yeah, it was tough. I kind of came home to it, honestly. She was actively miscarrying when I came home from work. That was tough. That was really, really tough. Yeah.
Um, what was the journey like out of that? I mean, there's um, the grieving process,
hmm
but how long did it, if you don't mind me asking, like how long
hmm
did it take to just kind of get back to a point of like, okay, we're going to be okay.
hmm
This isn't permanent. It's devastating, like you said,
Yeah.
but um, what was the recovery process like for you?
Yeah. You kind of have a sense of numbness in some ways. Brand new experience for both of us. Didn't really know what to think. We worked so long to get to that point, and then she's pregnant, we're having a kid, and then all of a sudden gets taken away, and go from this awesome high to the lowest low right away. And I think just that quick contrast is like so hard to deal with. It's one thing if you know something's coming, I feel like you can kind of start to pre-cope with it a little bit. You can't with that, and that was really hard to take that like just a blunt thing to happen right away out of nowhere. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it took time to really kind of fully process and accept it. That okay, you're not pregnant. We're not going to have another kid, at least for the time being. So that was really hard to deal with. To try and get over that, and then do we shift the mindset of okay, we want to try again? Like, is it worth going through the possibility of this happening again? Which ultimately did for a second time, which was unfortunate to say the least. That was hard as well. It actually happened. I wasn't with my wife; she was out of state at her family's home back in Illinois. I wasn't with her at the time whenever that happened, so that was kind of an extra punch to the gut, not being able to be there with her when that happened. But having that second one was like, man, is maybe Mac is our one guy we got, and so we kind of tried to shift the mindset of we're gonna have one kid and that's okay. He's our boy and that's fine. Like, not that we were upset that we obviously had him, but it's like, it's fine. We're lucky to have him. He's happy, he's healthy. That's okay. And then took time to obviously, deal with that second one as well. And it's like, what are the odds, this happens again, to do that. And then we were lucky and got pregnant. She got pregnant for, I guess, a fourth time collectively, and happy that we have another beautiful baby boy who's about 9 months old now. So Hank is his name.
So what does it feel like to be on the other end now, watching your two two boys grow up, knowing what it took to get there?
It's awesome, man. It really is. Mac, we informed him along the way of what happened, and at the time, his 2-3 year old self of, hey buddy, you're not gonna have a brother right now. Like, how do you tell a little kid, a toddler, so like that was hard stuff too. Like, how do you convey this? And you got to stay strong for him, even though he doesn't fully aware. But he had the concept of, I'm going to have another kid in the house, another friend to play with, and now you're not, and then for me to try and stay strong for my wife as well, when ultimately it happened to her, and like, sure, it happens to both of us, but like, she went through periods of like upset for me. Is like, this happened to you, you know what I'm saying? So that it's hard to try and get her to, feel like don't worry about me. Let's focus on you, kind of thing, So that was hard to do with, but being able to come through that, it just makes it extra special. We consider Hank kind of our miracle baby in some ways, you know what I'm saying? And he's happy, healthy baby, and we got so lucky to, I guess, third time's a charm there from the regards to the first and second miscarriage, but we had that kind of fear the whole time. I'm not going to lie, of what if it happens again? You know what I'm saying? And that was constantly in the back of our minds. It really was. Each ultrasound visit and everything. It's like, okay, each week we go, it's like, okay, well, we didn't get this far last time. Didn't get this far last time, so it's like, okay. And then, you never really feel like you're out of the woods, so to speak, until it happens. So it was definitely a very stressful pregnancy, and in regards to that, of, is this going to happen all the way through? And we're lucky that it did. Yeah.
So you had mentioned prior to us talking, you brought up a best friend of yours, Aaron
Mhm.
Stevens. Um, Let us talk to us more about Aaron. He was one of your best friends, I think,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Um, uh, why is his life important to know about?
Yeah. So Aaron, him and I grew up together, lifelong best friends, known each other basically since birth. Our parents were friends, and just lifelong friends. I guess had a little bit of a hiatus there for a little while through part of junior high, high school, where we kind of lost touch a little bit, but for the most part, lifelong friends. One of my best friends growing up, and through college and everything, and I looked at him a lot like a brother to me. Unfortunately, he did pass away a couple of years ago now. We're coming up on 2 years this July since he passed from a drug overdose. So that was one of the lowest points, dealing with that as well. Doing that, but I like you'd ask me, like, how did you want to people know about Aaron, things like that. Not that he was a drug addict, but Aaron was an awesome person. He really was. Just he had struggles. He did. We kind of reconnected a bit through college, through one of the jobs I was working through college at a restaurant, and we kind of reestablished our friendship kind of stronger than ever, honestly, during that time. And he was struggling a lot during that time, and I was kind of fully aware of the world that he was kind of in during that time. Of, okay, like, you are struggling, and this is something we need to try and fix and get out of, and so I tried hard to help him get out of that. Um, Probably to the point of where I probably annoyed him quite a bit, of things like that, of just trying to be that one person in his life. Not I say one, but one of the few people in his life that pretend like that this is not okay and there's a better way to do it. You know what I'm saying? Because he did have a rough inner circle that he ran with, and a lot of influence into some of his personalities that kind of lended into kind of that addictive lifestyle. And he struggled with that, and he was aware of that as well. And then got to a point where he got clean for quite a while, well over a year. And I got him into. Actually started by getting him to work out with me through the summer during my off season when I was home for the summer. And so, like, did a complete 180. Someone who's into all these drugs, really, kind of, you name it, he did it, kind of thing, just to be transparent. And then going from that to basically quitting it cold turkey, and not just stopping doing that, but like a whole new healthy lifestyle, and kind of got addicted to the gym in some regards, honestly. And, he thanked me a lot, for being someone that was consistent with helping doing that, and through our time doing that. And then he had some unfortunate things that happened in his life that kind of caused him to spiral back to the bad times, and never really quite got out of it. Unfortunately, then he ended up moving out to Colorado, and he was homeless for a while, and then found himself in a halfway house and got some help and was heavily medicated. Wasn't really the same person, and we'd have our phone calls. I remember he was basically unreachable for a long time, being homeless and everything. And there was a stretch where I hadn't talked to Aaron for, man, it was over a year. Just no way to get a hold of him at all. And there's someone, hey, we found out Aaron is here. He's alive. He's doing okay, but he's homeless, right? It's like, okay, he's still alive. That was a thought, I always had in my head of like, he could be dead for all I know, just to be grim about it. And then find out, okay, he's here. And then he got some trouble police wise and got arrested. And then found his way into a halfway house. So at least he had some forced stability there in some regards, which was better than the situation he was at. And he at least had a roof over his head and things like that, and wasn't in his addictions at that point, And then he was able to get off probation and get out of the halfway house and was doing well for a little while, and then kind of fell back into it. I stayed out in Colorado. And then it was actually 2 years ago. I think it was either the 4th of July night or the night after, I'm not mistaken. Got a call that he was, sorry, it's hard. He was found dead in a park. But yeah, that was tough to deal with. He was 30, having your friend pass away unexpectedly after, kind of the ups and downs they had. And the last you'd heard, he's doing well, and then he becomes unreachable again. And you find that out, like, man, that was tough. Didn't want to accept it, honestly. And it's like, this can't be real. That was really tough, losing your friend. You're used to losing grandparents and people have lived their life. This guy's 30, and really was a great person. I don't want to talk about all the bad stuff he did. He was, at heart, Aaron was a genuine person. He really was. One of the funniest people I've ever met, and just had great times together. And, it comes down to it, like, he'd do anything for you, really would. Very selfless person. And unfortunately just had the grips of bad addictions, and ultimately kind of led to that. Yeah.
What do you want people to understand about losing somebody that way? That maybe uh, they'll never perhaps experience or or know unless you've been through it. What do you want people to take away from that?
I mean, the takeaway I had to kind of convince myself was, you have to accept it, I guess. But for me, it was really the easiest thing I could do was kind of think about all the good times you have, right? And not looking at all the bad things. And it could be easy to get angry at him. And it's like, man, like, you got yourself out of it. What happened? And it's like, can't be angry at him. You really can't. And so checking yourself in that regard and trying to put yourself in their shoes. I've never been in a situation. I've never had those addictions. So I can't fully relate, but it's like, obviously he's struggling, and he's always so aware of knowing that he shouldn't be doing it, wanting to get out of it. It's not like he was like, no, I want to do this. Just, he had a lot of struggles in life that, unfortunately, that was his kind of escape. So trying to understand that just kind of, I don't want to say the way he was wired, but in some ways it just, that's what he did. And I worked so hard to try and keep him away from that. So I try and look back at all the good times that we had, and not just, maybe what some people on the outside looking like, oh, you see someone who, just to be frank, like, oh, a drug addict, Sure, he was. There's no taking that away, but he was a lot more than that as well. Like, he was a good person, and then just also happened to have that addiction, right? So knowing and understanding that he was a great person and had a lot of value to me as a friend, rather than, his addictions that he had, and ultimately, led to him dying.
How has Aaron's story changed the way that you show up as a coach, as a friend,
Mhm.
as a person, as a peer to other people? How has it changed the way you approach those situations?
Yeah. I was with him, and so not that I've really tried to change anything, but also just, I guess, to continue to be intentional and meaningful with relationships. He was someone I didn't want to give up on, and don't get me wrong, it was challenging and frustrating, to go through that through our friendship. It was, and he knows that, knew that. Um, but it was all worth it. It really was. So having those intentional, meaningful relationships, and just also it puts things in perspective. Like you never know what can happen, and never expect you to get that phone call to inform me what happened. And don't don't take things for granted, obviously, but I guess just for me, checking myself of being meaningful relationships and still not giving up on people if it's someone has similar issues or addictions or troubles. Pour into them, help them through those times, and as frustrating as hard as it may be, and ultimately you got to want to help yourself. That was a big thing. I was would talk with him about, like, you got to want this. What I'm saying, if you really want to get out of this, you got to truly want it. Which he did. He'd go through kind of bouts of that, right? But don't give up on those people. Help them out. I was never in that world at all, and a lot of people that I spoke to along the way and through that time, like, he's like, "You're friends with Aaron?" He had a reputation. It's like, yeah, it's like, you don't know our backstory, right? We grew up together. Like, this isn't Aaron. This isn't always him. Fortunately, just happened to be that way later in his life. But clinging on to those good things and knowing that deep down there's something better there than maybe the bad things that you see on the surface and things like that. Yeah.
I had asked you prior if you could have one honest, transparent conversation with the world, what would that look like? Um, you had pushed back against the safe route early on in your, college and in your career.
Hmm.
So you had the opportunity to go to grad school, the known route that lots of people have taken,
Yeah.
but you decided to bet on yourself and take
Mhm.
that volunteer position.
Yeah.
Um, what what do you think we're missing as far as life's priorities go? Like the pressure to chase college and that big paycheck,
Hmm.
I think frequently in our culture goes against losing sight of what we as human beings really want to pursue.
Yeah.
What are we missing? What do you think we're um, losing our focus on in trying to make those big decisions there?
Passion and enjoyment. Honestly, do you truly love what you're doing, or do you love the idea of trying to make money? And if you can find both things, great. Saying like, oh, I can make a great living and I love what I do. I know too many people that hate their job, and a lot of them make good living. They live comfortably in that regard, but they're kind of miserable. I don't envy that at all. And I get a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, but there are people in my world that have or do express, maybe my lack of a big paycheck compared to what some other jobs can do, as a concern. I love what I do without a doubt. I'm going into my 10th year at Drake here. I guess close to 12 years collectively coaching. Um, I've loved every minute of it. Like, don't get me wrong, like, there's ups and downs, there is to anything, but every day, like, I look forward to getting up and going into practice. And obviously it's hard to leave your family in the mornings and things like that. Like that sucks. It does. We also got to make a living, right? And things like that. But my living is coaching. And I feel like like I said earlier, kind of like it's a cheat code in some ways. Like I love doing this. This is still sports and kind of my initial passion. And I get to go and coach athletes for a living and travel around the country and do things like that. So I think those opportunities and me reflecting on how much I really enjoy what I do, like any lack of money, so to speak, like, we live comfortably, we're fine. Don't get me wrong. It's like, I would rather love what I do and still live comfortably than, have this excess and like, man, I got to go into work today. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how people do that. I really don't. Unfortunately, I know too many people that do that. And some people, and I understand you can't always control everything. I get that. But foundationally, a lot of people, like we talk about, that path to get there through college and pursuing things, a lot of kids are stressed or pressured from society, family, friends of, well, you need to go be a doctor, you need to be a lawyer, you need to be an engineer, whatever that may be. Like you got to do something that makes money. And if you have a passion, great, go do it. But just too many people that I personally know don't have that passion for it. And it's like, I feel like in a lot of ways, you're just setting yourself up for failure long term. I really do. And I think people get too obsessed with that of what you're supposed to do from a financial security standpoint, or maybe what your family has done or what they see for you. Do what you want to do. I don't feel like I work. I really don't in a lot of ways. It's like a hobby I get paid for in some ways. I'm so lucky to have that. So yeah, I feel like too many people just get too caught up in that and kind of lose sight of what really brings you joy. I think back to me, like whenever I switched my major, from business to this, like, I don't know if I'm really loving what I'm doing. And I don't feel like I have a clear path of what I want to do with this business degree. But it's like this side does. I love what I'm doing. And then it just blossomed into so much stuff. And then the same point of whenever I had to decide of strength coach or throws coach, it's like, I like the idea of being a strength coach, but I love the idea of being a throws coach. And it's like, I'm going that way. Like I love it. So why would I not pursue that? As long as I know that, okay, I can still make a living and I'm fine. I got a roof over my head and all that stuff, but I love what I do. I'm winning. I think that's the definition of success. Honestly, I really do. Like if you love what you do and you got great relationships, everything else that kind of comes with that, like that's success. I think too many people define success by money. Like, oh, he or she's successful. They make a lot of money. Maybe it's a small part of it, but are they happy? Deep down, I think that's success. If you ask me, I have a beautiful wife and kids. I love what I do, and we live fine. I think that's pretty successful if you ask me. So
Absolutely. And on that note, we're gonna go ahead and close up shop today. Real quick before we leave, Zane, for someone that's listening that wants to follow what you and the Drake track and field program are doing, where do we find you?
yeah. So I guess I'm not too active on social media, but I do have an Instagram page. I think it's Throws Coach Chapman. Zane Chapman is my name. It's mostly a lot of stuff with my kids on there. Otherwise, Bulldog Throws for Drake Bulldogs is our throws account on Instagram, which is where we kind of post things for what we do with our athletes, everything like that. I run the account on there, and you can kind of follow our success for our athletes on Bulldog Throws on Instagram.
And real quick, when does the next season start?
So we'll start training in fall this September, but our first meet won't be until either December or January with indoor season. So we got a little bit of a while off season now. Time to kind of relax, recover a little bit before we get back to the grind this fall.
And until then, we are super excited to see what this next season holds. Zane, thank you so much for being able to come on, give me some of your time, and thank you for just a great conversation. This was
Yeah, I feel like we
fantastic.
covered a lot of bases. So
Yeah, we
this was
did.
great. I loved it. Thank you for having me on here, and it's been a lot of fun doing this. Really has.
Awesome. Well, until next time, everybody, be sure to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment or review. Those things really help this new channel grow. And until next time, see you. Bye bye. There you go, man.
Awesome, man. Hey, I really appreciate it.
That's
That
it.
was a lot of fun. I
Absolutely.
enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I
Thank
enjoyed
you.
that.
Thank you for being willing to open up and be honest about the conversation.
Yeah,
It's exciting to hear about what the program's doing, but I think it's even more valuable to hear about real human experiences that people go through that I don't think enough people talk about.
I
So,
agree. I agree.
yeah, thanks again, man.